guys. Shockingly, it's April and it's raining and snowing out at the same time. So I'm just down in the basement doing a little update video on two new additions to the layout. This winter's actually been so terrible that I've spent actually a lot more time down here than I have in previous years. So I guess that's kind of good for the layout. I've done a lot of work, spent a lot of money in trees. If you're not sure, if you've never visited here, the layout is set to, mid-November 1956. So you see some snow, but I don't do the heavy midwinter plow train snow. It is fall, and we've had our first light snow. So snow is just touching anything that isn't heated, but it's one of those first snows of the year that you get up here in New Hampshire where it's not really sticking, but it is a little bit white on the tops of things. So that's kind of the theme I go for here. Anyway, also up on the mountain, the snow does get deeper, but down here in the valleys, it is a little bit lighter. So there is actually a difference in the snow levels. So anyway, I've been sitting down here and I pulled out a coach train to kind of show you some passenger cars. These two cars are representations of the Osgood Bradley American Flyer cars. They're not exact. I'm not sure what the actual base model of these were, but they're roughly similar. Good enough for the girls I go out with. I don't use these a whole ton. These were given to me by a friend. However, like anything with body-mounted couplers on 24-inch radius track, they tend to not love the curves unless they're being pulled. So any kind of yard switching or taking a siding somewhere, these especially, because they're fairly lightweight, have tended to derail a lot. And they don't like complex curves. And what I mean by a complex curve is if you're coming through a switch like here and you're coming out this direction on one curve and then you're curving back to take this siding, especially with these Atlas number 4s, the cars don't love them and they tend to kind of start the string line. And that's all these cars. It's not just these. Weight does help a little bit. But if you can take the straight siding, and I only run 1 or 2 cars per train anyway. I model branch line operations. I don't do anything mainline passenger. I like the, B&M moguls pulling 1 or 2 cars on local freights. But these are in the fleet here, and they're nice. They're nicely painted. And moving on to these, I've been using these for a while. Bought these at a train show, and they were one of those, $10 boxes, and they're the old Ambroid wood kits with Central Valley trucks. They're actually wood, but they're kind of tired. They're not the correct colors for the B&M, but they were better than nothing. Let's take a look at these here. They do the same thing. They tend to string line in curves. They have glazing, but as you can tell, the decals are kind of bubbling up and they're getting tired. And for the 1980s, they were a great representation, but I was watching on YouTube the channel Heiss. He had done an interview with the people down in Strasbourg who own Paradise Car and Loco Works. And I was very drawn to the car. I mean, they looked amazing. And I contacted the owner and I said, look, I don't paint, I don't decal, I don't build. If I buy your kit, it's going to sit in my basement in a box forever. With 2 jobs, I don't have time to really paint and decal or the patience. So the owner, Tim, was very nice enough to say, look, I will help you out. I will build and paint the cars for you. It'll take a little while. This isn't my main job, but I will help you out. And, obviously charge me a nominal fee, which I was happy to pay, because I don't like to build things. I don't like to paint things. It's just not my aspect of the hobby. So these cars are actually, these are 3D printed. These are not mass production models. These are 3D printed. I believe it's resin, whatever the gray stuff is. And he added the nicely redone trucks. Same thing with the body mounted couplers. These don't like the complex curves, and that's just the length of the car. Doesn't really matter the manufacturer. It's just you can't beat physics with that. But this is 2083 and 1179. And both of these are actually at Strasbourg. I have ridden in both of these cars, visiting Strasbourg. And I will say the detail on these cars is exquisite. There's a little gap here because I have not glued on the roof fully. He's doing a interior model in the future, so I'm just not going to glue these on until the interior is released. But the decals were custom made for the correct time period of 1950. Same with the coach, the green clear story windows, the glazing. I mean, just the detail, the underbody detail. It's hard to see, it's kind of dark down there, but the underbody detail is phenomenal. Just down to the individual siding. Focus in. You know, down to the individual clapboards on the car, the correct sashes. Just amazing detail on these cars. The only historical inaccuracy, which it's really not, is Donald Halleck. So the current car in Strasbourg today has Donald Halleck's name on it. The B&M would not have had Donald Halleck. However, as a historical nod to Don, he was one of the people that rescued the Strasbourg into what it is today back in the 50s. And he was also the founder of the Wolfboro Railroad up in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, where I ride my motor car with the Cotton Valley Club. So it's a little historical nod to someone that, made the railroads that I run my rail cars on today. And I've actually ridden in this car. One of my favorite spots to ride is actually in the Combine door at Strasbourg. I asked him if he could put that on there. And I did add some stuff to this car. And I also, just so you know, I did pay for this myself. This isn't a paid advertisement. But I did add weight to the insides of these cars because they do need it. I use this material. It's a very thin layer of stuff. It's called liquid gravity. I use it for actually RC airplanes, for balancing out CGs. But like I said, I haven't glued the tops of these cars on yet. But we'll just leave that there. All right, so that's the cars. And we're going to move on to the new BLI locomotive. All right, so the other addition to the layout is this Berkshire made by Broadway Limited. So the B&M had the T1 and A and the T1Bs. This is a T1A. The only real difference was the tender on the A's was a 4-wheel as opposed, or 4-axle, versus the B's, which were the 6-axle tenders. There's some other minor modifications regarding the steam chest. Nothing you're really going to tell from this far away other than the tenders. This locomotive is fairly expensive. It lists for almost $700 MSRP. I picked it up at my local hobby shop for $508. So it is expensive, and I was a little hesitant actually buying it, but I'm glad I did. So I've done a little bit of weathering to it. Took the sheen off the wheels, light chalk weathering on the boiler, and some lime and lime scale weathering on the tender, well, the top of the tender by the water fill for evaporated water. The coal looks nice. It does have a working reverse light. Cab lights with figures. Very nice, simple, and thank you BLI for doing this. A very nice, simple hook system. I have some other engines that get the 2-pin, and you're always in the wrong spot with them, or you're actually just pulling your train with the wires from the tender. They really got the floating firebox detail correct on these Lima built engines, which is actually one of the downfalls. The actual locomotive was the extended firebox causes the derail. This rear truck would derail when backing up through a curve. The dynamo mounted low. I mean, these locomotives were at about as much as your could get in tunnel clearance. So they were, they had a really lower the whistle, stuff like that. So, and they also had the coffin feed water heaters, which is that big shroud you see in the front. Gave them a very distinctive appearance. The jury's out whether they're ugly or they're beautiful, but there it is. Number boards, the correct style bell. This locomotive also has a smoke unit, which you'll see when we run. It's got a nice sound system. It's very loud. I would recommend out of the box turning it down to the lowest setting. It is loud. So we're going to fire it up and let it run for a little bit. So as you can see, this locomotive does have a working smoke unit. And initially I was kind of mixed on the idea of this. I didn't want it to look like a cheesy Lionel toy. So I could live without it. But after running this for a while, that really, especially the steam engine, really enhances the appearance. I'm not really sold on them on diesels because if you're blowing that much smoke, then your locomotive needs a rebuild. But the idling sounds on this are beautiful. You can hear the injectors picking up. It's just a very well done model. And also, it's a puller. It is a very heavy engine and also nicely a very heavy tender. I hate when you have a very heavy engine and a light tender, and that's the first thing that streamlines in your train is your tender. So congrats to BLI for getting the tender right with some weight in it, and the locomotive to have a nice heavy frame. So I have 15 or 16 cars on this train. That's the longest I have siding capacity for. And this locomotive pulls it like it's not even there. A lot of my diesels, you get 6 or 7 cars on the hill. I have 4% grades here, so they're relatively steep, but this locomotive doesn't even hesitate. So anyway, let's take it out for a spin on the layout.